Pretty much every Jobless Reincarnation fan says it, but the directing and visual production for the show is absolutely mind-blowing. That intro sequence with the fight scene, it had no right to look as good as it did for how short of a fight it was, and honestly you could say how meaningless the fight was. Sure, it shows just Eris and her abilities and how they've grown, but like, what anime would go that length to showcase that type of animation production? Really only Jobless Reincarnation, so it's kind of amazing. Before we jump into the main review, which obviously is episode 7, I do want to make a mention. If anyone wants to be a moderator for the channel who knows of the source material for Jobless Reincarnation, let me know down in the comment section. I've promoted quite a few people over the past couple of weeks of adding mods to the channel just to help keep it more, you know, lack of hate and spoilers and things like that. But this show in particular has been horrible for me, for people just blatantly spoiling things, and as someone who loves this show, I want to be able to experience it fresh. So if you know the source material and you want to help kind of like moderate the comments, let me know. I'll take a look at your comment history, and if so, I'll add you. I'll probably add more than one if I get a couple of good requests, so just throwing that out there. If you do want to be a mod, let me know, because I want to try to enjoy this as spoiler-free as possible. Now, with that out of the way, this episode, in any other series, you might want to say was a slower episode, a boring episode, but leave it to Jobless Reincarnation to make it feel just as exciting as literally the past 6 weeks. The whole idea of this episode was basically Eris learns to dance, and then Rudy ultimately helps her, and he dances with her, and shows all these royal brats that, you know, just because someone may not be the most well-polished dancer or speaks in the best royal patterns, doesn't mean you have to call her an idiot at her literal birthday party. And it was very nice to see the development and show even just the small baby steps that characters like Rudy are taking to improve on themselves. Last week, there were some pretty scummy things that Rudy did, and in this episode, we end it in a comedic fashion, but I will say it does show slight growth, that he is overcoming that horrible perviness that he started out in his original life and now is in his new life. Last week he groped a girl in her sleep, and in this episode when he wakes up he's going for another fondle, and yeah, he makes a quick little joke about how the ring definitely protects, and then even before the ring was given, you learn that, you know, it probably doesn't do much since Paul was able to attack our girl here, and I'm like, the show is no chill. But still, I like how they're showing like, hey, you know, he's starting to recognize maybe he shouldn't do things, and while he should have known that to begin with, it's nice having a character who technically wasn't a good person slowly learning how to act like a decent person now that he's growing up in a new world. Though granted, the families that he's been a part of either have far too many lovers or have far too many beast maids that they do some unnatural things with, so to speak. But this was an episode that was all about teaching and learning and showing that a character who in his original life ran away from everything. He would sit in his room jerking off when his parents' funeral was going on. Now is someone who's giving advice that's saying like, hey, just because you're not good at something doesn't mean you shouldn't try harder and harder. I'm trying to learn these languages, but I'm not giving up. I'm actually pushing forward and trying to be better. Because someone like Eris is someone who wants to have fun, she lashes out, and she doesn't know how to deal with things because pretty much until Rudy got there, all her life, if she didn't like something, she would punch her way to victory basically. And now, for the first time it seems like ever, she's actually having to learn to grow. And a character like Rudy, who knows what it's like to be a failure because his entire life was a failure before being reincarnated. The idea that he's able to use that experience, but not just use it and like say like, okay, you know, I have all these words of wisdom and I'm just a child, you're gonna accept it at face value. She's like, you're literally flawless at everything you do. Why would I trust you when you don't know what it is to be a failure? And then he brings up the concept of him learning new languages. It's like, it's a really good way for the viewer to understand the scene at a deeper level, but still take it at face value, saying it's understandable why a character like her, who does respect Rudy in a semi-decent way, would look at what he's saying as true. If he's struggling with languages and having to get beast tutoring in terms of the words, it's really nice to see that. It's very interesting too, the way the show is able to portray scumminess in this show, and not like glorify it or say like you should worship it, because a lot of what Rudy does, you're seeing the exact same things happen to someone like obviously Roxy, who's training the prince. And the prince is doing the exact same thing that Rudy would do. The main difference is that the prince's character design kind of mirrors that of Rudy's original form in terms of his first world. This kind of like fat, ugly bastard approach. And it's very interesting how fandom's reactions can be very different based on a character design. You look at Rudy's current form, it's very easy to take what he does and kind of brush it aside a lot more easy than when you look at the fat prince who looks like an ugly bastard hentai protagonist. But when you take into consideration that Rudy's original body was pretty much that, just in a more adult form, it's interesting how you can have a different opinion, even though it's like kind of like universally agreed. They're doing scummy things, but you don't have as much of a pushback reaction based on the character design or based on the voice acting. And I said it since the very beginning. The adult voice acting for Rudy was one of the best casting choices they could have done, because it lets you accept that this is a bad person, or he does bad things, but he will probably improve, and even if he does infuriate you, it's not one of those shows that's supposed to say you're supposed to worship Rudy. He does make a lot of mistakes. This is about a show about being reincarnated and seeing where a second life can take someone. It's really interesting to see how they're doing it. And even just the concept of like Rudy like finding his own ways to make money, because he's making these little statues of all his friends and family. And I just kind of thought like he was doing that because he was lonely. And then he ends up selling a removable clothing. He literally makes a figure line of Roxy, even though it was one where it can remove the dress, and he gets a gold piece for it. I'm like, my man is an entrepreneur, but at the same time, maybe don't do it for your old sensei there, you know, maybe do it for a different character. There's a lot of like probably hot girls in the market. Why not do one of them instead of like ending up, you know, with royalty kind of like being like, oh, I'm gonna start licking this figure, and I'm like, this shit ain't okay. But still, it's kind of interesting to see like the modern ideas, like kind of like removable clothing on figures being kind of implemented in a medieval like world. It's very interesting. Or how they just casually end the episode saying like, you know, what does that look like to you? Yeah, I'm not going to worry about it because it makes it a lot more easy to sleep at night if you think nothing bad's going to happen. It's just one of those episodes that really, on paper, doesn't seem like a lot happened. But I can't say that this episode didn't feel like 5 minutes. It really flew by like that. I was like, holy shit, this episode started. You're kicking me off with one of the most gorgeous fight scenes I've seen all week. And then you end the episode within minutes, it felt like. And like the idea of the gifts and giving wands and the idea of giving the ring and things like that. It's really interesting how this is a show that really makes you care about the cast dynamics and how there's so many flaws within these characters, but they don't excuse the flaws. They just say this is a part of the character. It kind of reminds me of how people like worship idol culture and just like celebrities. Like they'll put like famous people on pedestals or people who have more of a following than them and just say they can do no wrong. Where this is a show saying you should never do that because you don't know what that person's true intentions are. You can like a piece of media that they created, but you don't know them as a person. And you're looking at this cast of characters. Rudy is a great example. The grandfather can even be seen as a great example. You can enjoy their content without worshiping them as a person, which is how hopefully eventually the internet will be. Instead of putting like celebrities and famous YouTubers and things like that on this pedestal, enjoy the content without putting them as a person on this pedestal because you don't know who they truly are, which is why you always see these crazy stories come out when you're like, yeah, that's how they always were, but you just didn't see it because you didn't know them as a person. Where Jobless Reincarnation, it's simply saying, hey, you can enjoy these characters without worshiping them. I can enjoy Rudy, and when he does scummy things, I'm not going to be like, well, I can't watch Jobless Reincarnation now, he made me mad. No, I say, that's a really scummy thing, that's a really shitty thing. You're a really bad person when you do that, Rudy. But I enjoy your character because I'm watching a piece of anime. I don't need to worship these characters as my role model. And it feels weird to have a show in an oversaturated genre like isekai and modern anime and see it really just say, this is where most of these series go wrong, because it makes you a self-insert for this character. Where here, it's not designed to be self-inserts, it's just telling a story. And whether it infuriates you, whether it makes you happy or mad or sad, whatever it is, that's the point, that the world will give you all sorts of emotion, and the people you meet along the way will probably do a lot of things to make you feel many different emotions. A show like this doesn't come around all too often, and that's why we really gotta hope that this remains popular so we can remain with the quality we're seeing. I think it was last week, it was like animated by one person, like just the quality that we're seeing for such a talented team is insane, and I'm so excited for more. Let me know your thoughts and feelings on, I would say, a very eventful episode that on paper doesn't seem all that eventful, but really, I mean, from dancing to the swordplay to just the character bonding, I thought it was an exceptional episode. But let me know your feelings down below. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, share your support, and hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.